Hello and welcome to Twerk, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing people, the fantastic jobs they do and the paths that led them to where they are today. I'm here with Henry. Hi Henry.
Hi Michelle, nice to see you.
Could you tell the listener what it is you do for a living?
So I am currently headmaster of Oakham School.
Mm-hmm.
This is my 6th year.
Do you know, I was just looking at that downstairs. Isn't it slightly awkward that there's a gap though on that plaque? Does it feel a little bit like...
Who knows how long I'll be up there?
You just don't know, do you?
And that's a bit in my control, and it's also in other people's control.
Indeed.
But hopefully a few more years.
Cool. Right. Before we go too far into your career, we always start back and we talk about little Henry.
Okay.
So people can get a feel for what you were like and how you've come to this point in your life. So, what were you like when you were younger? What were you into? Because obviously I know you've got 4, haven't you?
4 children.
4 children. So were you one of 4 or 5 or...?
No, I'm actually the youngest of 2.
Okay.
I've got a brother who's 5 years older than me. So we grew up together in London.
Yeah.
Nothing particularly remarkable about us. Lived in Putney.
I love
in the hood,
Yeah,
as Mary sometimes teased me.
Putney is in the hood now, though.
Yeah.
Was it quite hood-like when you were there?
No, not at all.
I was going to say.
No, not at all. That's how Mary teased me when I pretend I'm a sort of city boy.
Yeah, okay.
But actually, although I've spent a lot of time in beautiful rural market towns and I enjoy that, I do love a big city. My dad sold up from our house in Putney in my early 20s, and I still, in a sense, think of that's where I grew up. There were people say, where am I from? I don't really feel that. I've moved around quite a bit since then, and I kind of feel I'm from where I am now.
Yeah. Okay, so what was your life like in Putney then? Were you really good at school? Because obviously everybody automatically thinks that teachers are really academic and schooly, aren't they?
It's hard. I want to be modest, but equally honest. I mean, I've been really lucky. I went to fee-paying schools through my life. I went to a extremely nice prep school in Sussex in the 80s, I guess, and I left there in 1987. And that was a pretty remarkable place. And in truth, it probably has a lot of bearing on why I'm sitting here now today talking to you. It was a very positive experience.
Yeah.
I know some will think that boarding for a young person is an odd choice, but it was a very happy place. I boarded there from the age of 7 to 13.
Ah, okay.
A co-educational school, and I loved it there.
Yeah.
And I played lots of sport, and I acted in plays, and I played the clarinet, and I made good friends. And
so you properly, because I know obviously it's a big thing, not to jump too far ahead, it's a big thing of your philosophy here, isn't it? Is for children just to really experience it all. Yeah,
it's a simple phrase, holistic education, but I absolutely believe in holistic education.
Because you had it.
It's a big influence. I mean, you have to be careful of trying to recreate your own. You can't impose kind of the lens of your own experience on others, but equally, I think it has served me well. Certainly, some of the acting and drama I did there under a really inspirational head, and perhaps I'll come back to him in a moment because his influence is really important in this. But, I learned a lot in the classroom there. That head taught me classics, Latin and Greek, and that remains something I did through my secondary school and took on to do at university, and is still important to me. And I guess that's the thread. I did Latin and Greek taught by that head who was a great person. I carried it on through secondary school, did it at uni, and really that's my job. I'm really a classics teacher who accidentally became a headmaster over time. I've heard
this a few times, but right.
And also classics in itself actually is an interesting one because it's a great all-rounder subject, because it deals with lots of disciplines, whether it be language or literature or history or art or politics, geography. That there's all sorts of things. It does suit an all-rounder, and it didn't really occur to me at the time, but it does now, and I still regard myself as an all-rounder.
Right.
And I think, oddly, in headship, whilst people may look at me as a head has to have quite an all-round view of things, that the number of different plates that you spin or areas of expertise across the school, whether it be, teaching and learning, obviously pastoral care for pupils, the co-curriculum, all the things that parents see, but actually behind that lies HR and strategic plans and all sorts of compliance and regulations, and the business side, as you say. So, but going back full circle, that was a great place called Cumnor House School in Sussex, a wonderful head, very inspirational.
So you were there until you were 11?
Till I was 13.
13, okay.
And really important there was great sense of sort of unspoken values, but the values and the way you behave was really clear, actually, really clearly articulated, even though it's quite hard to put your finger on it at times. And I think children pick up on that, and I think that's very important. That, they're there to be challenged, supported. There are, sometimes forgiveness, mistakes, all of those good things, which are part of being in a school and bringing up children. And that's what we're doing in a school, I think, as well as all the education that's so important. We are partners with parents in bringing up children. And that's a great, great joy and a great privilege. At times that's tough.
And a huge responsibility.
And responsibility, but one I welcome. After that I went to Eton College, and people have all sorts of pictures in their mind of what Eton College is, and I guess I still look at it through the eyes of a schoolboy, but also now as a head looking back. But fundamentally, I consider myself really fortunate to have been there, and I worked quite hard. I played sport all the time.
Did you?
I did some drama and some other things. I made some great friends, probably made some mistakes as well. But, I've got to say, it served me well, and I feel very fortunate to have been there. And there were high standards. So I think seeing my peers, we did have high expectations of ourselves, actually, and I think those high expectations do go on. There were high standards inculcated in us and expected of us, and I think we responded to that largely in school, in as much as teenagers ever do, and probably take them with us on into life. With the caveat that none of us are perfect. We're all capable of being quite useless at times.
But I guess that's the flip side of it, isn't it? It's, as much as it's seen as, and you talk about the education that you provide as, I don't know if you described it as a gift. I can't remember what you said when we sat in front of you that first time, but it's something the children need to be aware and grateful, not to the point that they're, walking around feeling like, but it is a gift, isn't it? And it's something that they need to cherish. But I guess the flip side of that gift is, like you say, an expectation. It comes with it, a weight of an expectation, generationally sometimes, but even societally, really, isn't there, for you to deliver something, for you to go above and beyond?
Yeah, I think it is a gift, and it is a responsibility. You're absolutely right. I don't want it weighing on any pupil's shoulders, that they should be feeling overly grateful, but I think they need to have a growing understanding of that. That's why one of the school values is contribution. I would like Oakhamians to make a contribution in the future. They will. It doesn't matter exactly how or exactly when. That's for them to make up. It's 1,000 small gestures, but it's also the things they go on and do. They will make a contribution, and it's not paying back in a literal sense, but it is giving back in the future. And that investment of a great education is why so many parents here and in many other independent schools continue, particularly in difficult times, to do their best for their children. That's emotive, but I still have to believe it's the right thing to do, and I thank all the parents that continue to do so.
Okay, we've skipped around there, and that's completely my fault. But if we track back then, so you finish, I'm going to say GCSEs. Not that I wanted to unduly age you there, Henry.
It's all right.
But you finish your GCSEs, you did classics for A-levels. What were your A-levels then?
So I did Latin, Greek, French and English for A-level.
With a plan to doing what?
I think I probably knew that I was always going to read classics at university.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure when that got locked in, but I think I probably knew as I chose those A-levels back in 1989-ish.
Yeah.
I finished school in 1992. So I think I knew I was going to be a classicist. And I genuinely did, and I still do, love Latin, Greek, language things, but also the literature that goes around it.
Yeah.
And I still am interested in that. I loved teaching it when I was a teacher. And I still read a little bit around it, though not as much as I used to.
So did you have any view of a career?
I had a strong sense, probably even in my early teens, that I would be a teacher.
Okay, okay.
I think because of the positive experience I'd had at prep school and quite an inspirational prep school head who his ethos, his manner, everything was quite inspirational to me. And I don't think that got rocked in any way through my experience at Eton.
Yeah.
And when I was at university, I was at uni for 4 years. Well, in fact, my gap year, when I left school, I did work in London for 4 months, and then I went to Zimbabwe as a gap student. So my first job actually was in Zimbabwe, working in a boys' independent school in Zimbabwe. So again, I guess I was straight in education there, and it was another positive experience of coaching sport, doing bits and bobs of jobs, and frighteningly even teaching a few lessons age 19, which in hindsight seems remarkable, but was a sign of the times and a sign of the place that I was in, but also probably a little bit a sign of my own confidence and interest in wanting to try and do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at uni...
So where did you go to uni?
I was at Oxford University for 4 years. And towards the end of that, I did dabble with kind of milk round type things, which probably was me just going with the flow a little bit, even though in my heart I knew it wasn't for me. But you do get swept away and thinking you ought to do something else.
Okay.
And you can see your peers getting excited about other jobs.
Yeah.
But in the end, I came back to knowing what I wanted to do, and was lucky again that my former head at Eton was a master of one of the Oxbridge colleges.
Yeah.
And I went to see him, talked about a career in teaching, was reluctant at that point to go straight and do a PGCE because I'd done a gap year, 4 years at uni. That would have been a 5th year.
Yeah.
Frankly, my dad wouldn't have been that impressed. And I got put in touch with the head of a great school called Sydney Grammar School. And I went out there really as what we'd now call a graduate assistant. I was rather grandly named the Oxford Classics Fellow. And off I went. I finished my finals in June, and I arrived in Sydney on July the 9th, and I started teaching on like the 12th of July. I mean, again...
Of course, yeah, because their school years are different, aren't they?
Yeah, I wouldn't really like to see playback of some of those lessons, but again, I was pitched in, taught some lessons, coached sport, did things that young masters get asked to do in a busy school, and loved it, and did it for nearly 2 years.
Oh, okay, so you were out there for 2 years.
Yeah. And again, a really, really highly academic school. Actually, the sport and music was fabulous.
Yeah.
Really exciting city, and just good people. And you're so reliant on life in good people helping you.
Yeah.
Nice mentors as a young teacher that allow you to do things, and when you trip up, quickly pick you up, but don't make it too easy. I remember my first set of reports, and no one had explained to me the rubric about the reports, about the order they're meant to be in, the terminology you had to use. There was a whole list of things, and I dutifully wrote all my reports and had them all given back to me, and had to correct them. I remember practically bursting into tears.
Yeah.
It was a tough lesson.
Yeah.
But you adapt and you go again.
Yeah.
And I've always then had this really high standard of report writing in my own mind about what is a good standard and what should be done properly.
So this was an Australian school. It wasn't a British school in Australia.
Sydney Grammar School, leading school in Sydney in Australia.
That does sound very cool.
It was lovely. It was great.
And you're what, like 21, 22 at this point?
No, I was 23 actually.
23.
Yeah, 23. Yeah.
That's a great time to be in, great age to be in Sydney. Though,
It was a very, very good experience and a great way of doing a kind of almost like a PGCE plus, because obviously I didn't have a full timetable, but I did have a timetable. I was learning how to teach in the classroom, as well as about reporting and pastoral care and being a tutor and just balancing life in a busy school, which actually is then something I've kept on doing.
So when you left there then, had you progressed at all career-wise, or had you moved up the ladder?
I hadn't really progressed. I think I came back to the UK. I had a little hiatus where I did some sort of temporary teaching, but I had my first full-time job in the UK in what would have been September 1999 at Sherburn Boys' School, which is a really great full boarding school down in Dorset. Must have been 600 or so boys at the time. And then, you know, I was a fully fledged classics teacher. I coached the first team rugby, and I took the second 11 cricket, and I was a tutor. And again, you just do the stuff that also happens in the background.
But still to the water then, you went.
Yeah, that was it. But that was, again, probably a theme of this, if there is a theme as such, is one's luck in having good people look after you. And I can think of, there was a legend called Mike Davis, who'd been a legendary England rugby player and coach, who helped me coach, or when I say help me, showed me how to coach.
Wow.
A lovely man called Mike Nerton, same in cricket. I was in a house, a guy called Giles Reynolds had been a housemaster for a while, and he had a lovely young family, and very much showed me what boarding house life could be like, and what being a good tutor was, and very supportive family. And actually in the classics department, a very supportive head of classics called Martin Brooke, who again allowed me to teach, but was there if I needed.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You need mentors. And I was really fortunate there. They were really positive, and numerous other people that I've forgotten, but that's it.
Wow.
And I remember the head, a guy called Peter Lapping, who'd been there a while, and just remember this phrase he said to me: just remember, Henry, there's lots of other stuff, but get your teaching right. Your teaching is the bedrock. Get that right.
Above all else.
And that was really good advice, because it's easy to get carried away with your tutor group or your coaching or this, that and the other. But actually your currency, particularly at that early stage, is good lessons.
You're going to live or die by, aren't you?
And I say that to young staff now, or less experienced staff now. It's wonderful. Do all these things, we need you to, but your currency is still, get that. That's where your confidence comes.
That is the feedback that parents get most of all, isn't it? If I know anything about the school, I know what teachers my kids do or don't gel with.
Yeah.
Because that is the most probably common form of feedback currency, isn't it, that parents get? So that's really smart coaching. Okay, so there for 2 years. So we're now what, sort of 20?
So we're now 2000 and 27,
20s,
2001, and loved Sherburn. Actually, would have stayed a bit longer, but there's this person called Mary who'd been in my life since university.
Oh, did you meet?
We'd met at university, and.
So what did Mary study? So
Mary's a linguist, so she did French and Italian.
Wow, okay.
So we'd been friendly, and then together at the back end of university. And actually, obviously, then me going to Australia probably wasn't ideal in that relationship.
Gosh, of course,
in simple terms, but long distance relationship, and a few flights back and forth seemed to work out, and Mary came out for a little bit as well. So then we come back, Sherburn, Mary was working in London, and she'd come up and down. Obviously, I had holidays.
Yeah.
But then we got engaged, and actually, at that point, I got a job in rugby, at rugby school. So it's a sideways move, really.
Yeah.
It's not a promotion
just a
anyway.
relocation,
It's a relocation based on the fact that it would allow Mary, who was commuting to London, it would be possible for Mary and I to be together. She could still commute to London.
Yeah.
Actually, my dad by that stage had moved to near Daventry, so geographically it worked there. Mary's family are from Market Harborough. So it kind of, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I'd had some, fun enough, I'd done QTS on the job at Sherborne. That's qualified teacher status.
Yeah.
And my mentor, again, had been a guy called Bob Montgomery, who was, anyone that really knows rugby school, he was a kind of legendary deputy head, great cricketer. His son played professional cricket, but he had come and mentored me. So it was another weird connection with rugby school.
Yes,
so when it came up, I didn't really know rugby school, but
Bob told you.
Bob told me.
I mean,
kind of worked out.
You don't ever meet a bad Bob, do you?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Oh, I don't know. I have to think about that. Probably not. So to all the Bobs out there, you're lovely.
Yeah, I think they're great, yeah.
So that was, I don't say just as a classicist, it was a classics role, it was a sideways move. I was sad to leave Sherborne, but it enabled Mary and I to get married in 2001, and obviously best decision of my life.
Of course.
In case Mary's listening to this, and it's been
no regrets
at all. But so that was a decision, and then I spent 13 years at rugby.
Yeah.
Which was a huge chunk. Well, I'm only 51 now, but I was at rugby from 27 to 40. I arrived with Mary, brand newly married, age 27, and we left 13 years later with 4 children for my first headship. So it's a big chunk of my life. Lots of wonderful things, a few things I probably didn't get right, but again, as part of my growing up as a human being, as a husband, as a dad, as a teacher, all those things, it was huge, and I will always feel very fondly towards rugby. And when we have fixtures, even now, I still feel an affinity with it, even though a lot of the people that were there have gone.
I'm not sure I get that vibe from the kids. It's more of a passionate rivalry, isn't it?
Yeah, but they feel that for lots of different schools, and that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. And I'm black and red now, but I have that's a school that will make me smile.
Yeah. So in your time, in your tenure then, so started as classics teacher, what were you?
Started as a classics teacher, so you're busy, you teach classics, you're a tutor in a boarding house.
Yeah.
I coached under 16 rugby there. I took girls netball team, which makes people smile, but was a really nice thing to do actually. Coached various different cricket teams, did a bit of squash.
Yeah.
But again, you help out in some of the sort of committees behind the scenes one forgets about around appraisal and all sorts of things that you do on top of that. And I became head of classics in my second year.
Yeah.
So I was head of classics for 5 years, I think, 4 or 5 years. I lose track now. 5 years, 2002 to 2007.
Yeah.
That was lovely. Loved running a classics department because it's big enough to be quite big, and you're running 3 subjects, Latin, Greek and classical civilization. You've got 5-year groups, probably had 5 members of staff in the team. You do trips abroad. But it's small enough actually where you can really know everyone in the department. And I've always felt that good teachers are both pastoral and academic, and actually with a really good head of department is quite pastoral. You get to know those pupils, make sure that just as a housemaster or housemistress knows the pupils, you as a HOD, head of department, can be that person too. Why is this person struggling? What is it, that thing? And how do you connect in with that? And how do you connect back with the pastoral team? That's really important. And actually, I think that's more difficult if you're head of English or head of maths in a really big department. In a department of classics, you can be quite hands-on. And you can really influence things. And numbers did go up in classics while I was there, and I was proud of that. And I loved teaching. And I say this with care because this is said with modesty. I was a really good teacher for that period. As head of classics, I really invested in it and cared about it and thought about it, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
The sad thing is then you become a housemaster and a headmaster, and it does wane because your energy goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you lose your instincts and your knowledge, but are you quite as well prepared? Are you giving quite as much extra time as you used to?
Well, you don't have the extra time
and you don't quite have
give.
it.
Yeah.
So as a teacher, that was just wonderful. Teaching a year 11 Form 5 we call it here. They called it D block actually.
Oh my
Something like
gosh.
Virgil.
I was going to say,
Just just a
sounds
real,
like...
happy days. Really happy.
Yeah. So, and then head of your department then,
Yeah.
and
then I became a housemaster in 2007, which I'd always wanted to do and was a good logical next step. I had looked at one role as a director of studies externally down at Canford, a beautiful school, and I pulled out of that. I always wonder what would have happened at that fork in the road, because at that point, as I said, I was really enjoying my teaching. I was really enjoying running the department. I was really kind of academically fired up. And so going down a director of studies, that feels a bit of an old-fashioned term now. Now we call it deputy head academic or something like that.
Yeah.
But that would have been a really interesting choice. But I think in my heart, I know in my heart and my head, I always wanted to be a housemaster. And actually the head made me a housemaster at a similar time. So that path came back into rugby school and came back into, or stayed in rugby school and became pastoral and running a house. So I now run the house. It comes back to mentors again. And the head at rugby throughout my time was something of a legend called Patrick Derham, who has retired now. He went on to be the headmaster of Westminster after rugby. But again, someone who just ran rugby amazingly in that time, but also invested in colleagues. And I like to feel, I know he invested in me. He gave me opportunities. A couple of times he was quite tough with me, rightly so.
Yeah.
And again, I respect him for that. He pulled me up when I made a couple of mistakes. But he always gave me opportunities, and I'm really grateful for that. But then this job came up at Wellington School in Somerset, which I didn't know a huge amount about, to be honest. And I did the first round interview of that the day after having done a final round interview for another big school as deputy head, which I didn't get. But to this day, I think it gave me such a good warm-up that the following day I was just kind of primed and ready. And it just felt right, and the second round felt right, and Mary came down and that felt right, and it was good for the family. And so again, fortune plays its part. And so 2014 I became head of Wellington School in Somerset. Lovely through school, from nursery right through to year 13, 800 pupils, co-ed, day and boarding, beautiful setting.
So you were the overall head?
Overall head, the prep school head reported to me, who remains a good friend, Adam Gibson, who's just got a job as head of Dulwich College in Thailand.
So what prompted that departure then?
If I'm really honest, I was a little bit a person in a hurry.
Okay.
And I probably applied for one or two things a bit sooner than I should have done. But
so how long had you been ahead at this point then?
So I did do 5 years there.
Yeah, I was going to
say.
But
I started looking at jobs in year 4.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I think that was probably a bit too soon. Though equally, opportunities come where opportunities come, and you can't always, you can't manage that actually. And one or two things came up that didn't work out, which I think were absolutely right to apply for. And there are a couple of things, well, actually only one thing in hindsight where now I would have a word with myself and go, what are you doing? Don't do it.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of ego getting ahead of me.
Yeah.
But when Oakham came, to be fair, that was very different, because I think I'd had a couple of warm-up things which had been good and bad in different ways. I did, though, by that stage, I knew I wanted boarding, I knew I wanted co-education, and then the geographical location here, in the end, you're applying to a school, are connected with the school, but also Mary's family are not far from here.
I was going to say, so she must have known the school and the area.
Connections to the area, and my dad's just over an hour away. So Somerset was fabulous, but actually we had no roots down there.
You had no real
so
support
there was
structure.
probably always going to be a time scale on that.
Yeah.
Whether it should have been a year or two longer, who knows? But I certainly am happy I ended up at Oakham, or that Oakham chose me. But there were lots of reasons. educational being the key, it felt right, the timing was right, and for Mary and me, from a family point of view, it's worked out well.
And I guess at any point, given you've obviously done all of these headships, you obviously haven't changed your mind that it's for you, though. I guess I'm saying that because you've quite candidly described the fact there's been ups and downs, and there's been lots of lessons learned.
Yep.
So some people may well have been through similar things and gone, "Do you know what, this just isn't for me."
And gosh, you could give all sorts of answers to that, and I'll try and be as honest as I can. Of course, I have doubts. Everybody, I think, that is real has a sense of imposter syndrome. And I feel that really deeply at times. And there are loads of things you get wrong in a week, in a month, in a year. But you hope and believe that the good things way outweigh that. So, truth be told, yeah, of course I have doubts. I hope anyone in any position of leadership has doubts at times. But it's still a fantastic job. And it's...
But I think you really believe in it, though, don't you? That's obviously what you've described.
Yeah,
you fundamentally believe in...
I believe in education.
Yeah.
I believe in doing the best for children. And of course I would say that. What else would a head say? And it could sound very cheesy, but anyone that opened me up and that knows me would know that's true. One of the things we talk about, and I believe really strongly, is we think about learning here at Oakham, and I talk about a connected curriculum, and not sure we've entirely articulated that, but pastoral learning is really important. Whether we just simply call that PSHE, I think that's too simple a topic, but if that's how people recognise it, but that is as important. And I've stood in front of parents, possibly even you, and said, this is important as algebra or covalent bonding or Latin verbs, that we discuss difficult issues, we help pupils understand them as best they can while they're with us, and we help them therefore take useful lessons with them in the future. And actually, that's part of our pastoral system here as well. All societies have had a kind of mentor apprenticeship, whatever you want to call it, the growing up in a village, which is well known. And we don't have such rich villages anymore. That's why a great independent school like Oakham is fantastic, because that does create more of a village. Those great HMs, those great tutors, the all sorts of staff that are other positive voices in people's lives. Doesn't mean that teenagers don't want their parents or aren't listening to them. Of course they are. But particularly through that kind of year 9, 10, 11 tunnel, they're the voices of their peers, the way they're growing into themselves, the things that are interesting them. They're so trying out the clothes that they're wearing. And all of these things are generalisations, but I come back to a great school. We're here to teach academic subjects and inspire and learning and intellectual things. Great experience outside the classroom, but that pastoral piece is so rich and so important and nuanced and different for different pupils and different parents at different times. Some will go, it's been an absolute breeze. You go, brilliant. Goes back to the question you said a while ago about this education being a gift and a responsibility. Wear it responsibly as you go as well. And modesty, you can be too modest and falsely modest. I'm not encouraging that. I think you should be aspirational. I think ambition is not a bad thing. It can be a pejorative word, but it doesn't need to be. One okay to be aspirational, ambitious, but with a good hint of modesty and groundedness and good sense and awareness of others.
Okay, my 3 final questions then are always, is there any life advice that you would give your younger self? Could be any version of your younger self. Something you just wish.
Don't be in a hurry would be one, actually. Enjoy the bit you're doing. Don't worry about the next bit. Though you can flip that and say you do need to keep an eye on the future. But don't be in a hurry, I think would be right. That would be advice that I should take. really have great mentors and look after them and be a mentor, I actually think I have done and will do. And for all my faults, it has been a strength. And I would say to a younger version of myself, keep doing that. Keep really appreciating and taking wisdom and knowledge.
Okay, question 2 then is, what do you think your older self would say to you now? So 70-year-old, 75, we can pick any age. Henry, what do you think it'd say to you now?
You worry too much about things, Henry.
But is that not your job?
Yeah, but I think they would say you worry too much. You overthink. You need to enjoy it more, smile more. Just don't overthink. Don't let things get you down. Just enjoy it more. Don't worry so much.
Wise man. Okay, and then the final question is always just a mantra or just a saying that you live and die by that you just want to share.
Well, maybe this is going back to my advice from my older self. I know what my T-shirt should say, which isn't necessarily my mantra, but it would be smile more. Yeah. But maybe that's not my mantra, but that's probably my advice to myself.
Well, and to others.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
It's okay.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and/or this role, then please go to our website www.twerk.org. The link is in this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.